Jim. Thank you very much for coming. And it would have been good if I had that whole introduction recorded as well, but I didn't. So again, I would like to welcome you. Now, you and I have talked about what we want to do first here, and I believe I have a little video that we're going to show, correct?
Yeah, and thank you very much, Anne, and to your group for hosting. Before you start the video, maybe just do a quick setup.
Sure.
So, like you mentioned, we've been studying great gray owls for quite a while, and one day Patsy said to me, "Jim, you're so good at catching owls. Let me make a video of you catching an owl so you can show the world how amazing you are." Well, of course, I said yes. So the short video clip you're going to show is me catching an owl.
Okay, so that's I've done step one here. This takes a couple of steps to get this all working properly here. Oops.
Thank you,
Okay.
Anne, for helping get all this set up.
Okay. That we've got. Okay. That's not an owl.
Ducks just want their way into the world of owls.
Coincidence? I think not. That's better. And boom. Oh,
If you want to play that again, maybe
sure.
I'll describe what's happening. Great gray owls
Okay.
hunt during the day. So we drive around till we find them, and then we put a artificial lure, or in this case, a live gerbil. And the trick is to not swing too early like I did in this video. You have to wait until the owl is right almost at the gerbil. If you swing too early, it dodges you. If you swing too late, but you don't want that to happen.
Oops.
So we've caught a lot of owls this way. It's yeah, it just
Jim,
gets more
how can
embarrassing the
that be?
more
You
often you
you
watch it.
miss every time I look at this. One more time. Maybe you'll
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. So anyhow, that's the pressure of being filmed. I don't know. I miss one every year. So that was my one for that year.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna
So
now
let's go ahead.
go ahead. Okay, so Jim is in Manitoba and I'm in Victoria, and I have higher speed Wi-Fi than he does. You may notice his voice jittering just a little bit now and then, and that has to do with the fact of him being way out somewhere in the wilderness in Manitoba. So I have his presentation on my computer, and we've got to do some extra magic to make it work so that he can control it from here. So just please be patient while we get that set up. We tested it right before the meeting, so it should work perfectly, right? 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 So far, so good. The duck didn't come back.
All right. Well, nothing like this life I've had has started without people who have helped develop the opportunity. And the three individuals I'd like to recognize is well, this big beautiful bird, Lady Grail, who is a tame great gray owl, and she and the person in the middle, Bob Nero, together raised enough money for me to study the great gray owl for my PhD, and I moved to Manitoba to do that under Bob Nero's supervision. And the woman on the other side of him is Ruth, his wife, and so I really owe a great debt of gratitude to these three individuals for creating this opportunity in this life. And they even influenced my personal life, and I'll maybe talk a little bit about that later on. So there's a bit of a delay when I hit the down arrow. So I'm not sure if you're still seeing the screen with Bob.
We are still seeing the screen with Bob. Um, try the
Okay, we'll
forward
try
arrow.
that again. There we go. So I'm hoping that you see the great gray perched on these ridiculously small twigs. And this is a grainy slide of a picture of a great gray owl that I first saw. And it was in Montreal, where I was doing my master's on American kestrels under Dr. David Bird, who some of you might know. Anyhow, the all the students just emptied out of the lab and rushed off to see this great gray owl. So I went along with the mob, and I couldn't believe how this huge bird could perch on these tiny, slender twigs. And as it turns out, they really are big birds, but they don't weigh a lot. So they'd weigh between 1 to 1.5 kilograms, or between 2 to 3 pounds. And um, so try that down
Yeah,
arrow.
it changed. We've got it.
Okay, so the range of the great gray owl, well, you can see yourselves on this map on the west coast, and you see that belt of green forest crossing Canada, going right to the Maritimes. It goes up to Alaska as well, and then down into the western United States in more montane regions and coastal areas. And it kind of coincides nicely with the range of the great gray owl. And some of you may know that this species, a different subspecies, also occurs in Eurasia. So it has what we would call a circumpolar boreal distribution. And the great gray owls over in Eurasia, they look a bit different. You might notice the face on this owl has got very tight concentric rings on the facial disc. And it's a little more heavily streaked than the great gray owls that we have here in North America. But a behavioral difference is quite interesting. The owls in Eurasia are extremely aggressive at the nest and routinely hit biologists or banders when they're up at the nest. So they have to wear helmets when they study them. Like most owls, or almost all the owls, they don't make their own nests. So they depend on species like hawks and ravens that build stick nests, and then the great gray owls will use those, having the advantage of nesting very early, so they kind of get the first pick of the real estate in the spring. And when we go out and check nests for great gray owls, this is what we hope to see in the spring. This is a tamarack tree in a tamarack bog, and it's a ginormous owl that's trying to make itself look as small as possible. And there's no way for them to hide. You can see their big, beautiful head. Now we followed some birds with radio transmitters. I'll talk a bit more about that later. And what we found that some owls would be nesting in a stick nest one year, and then a subsequent year we'd find them nesting in a broken off, rotted out tree stump. And so you can see the bird on the right here. You can see just her tail feathers and wing feathers sticking out. So they don't necessarily have to be an extremely large dead tree. Um, it can be quite small, like this one, just barely big enough to hold the owl. This was taken just outside of Manitoba in northwestern Ontario near Red Lake. And this owl, you can see the round head on top. It's actually nesting in what is called a witch's broom. And I'm not sure if you have the fungus or parasite that causes the proliferation of branches in trees in Vancouver Island, but these can also be good sturdy nest structures used by great gray owls. So we're unfortunately more familiar with fires in the boreal forest recently than in past decades, but fire has always been a major ecological force that affects the evolution and traits of many species, including the great gray owl. And so the fire has an important role in their ecology.
Mm. And we saw one.
So this tree that's been snapped off was at the edge of such a fire. And the winds are just so intense at the edges of these fires that any tree that is structurally impaired, it might have a woodpecker cavity, it might have carpenter ants or other ants affecting the structure by, causing tunnels. And those weakened trees often snap off and they rot out on top eventually. And if you look carefully, you can see the head of a great gray owl in the middle of this broken off snag or tree.
Yeah.
Here's again. There we go. So this, you can see the partial face of the owl through the crack in the tree. Of course, they're extremely well camouflaged. And so you can imagine just walking by this tree and not being aware that there's an owl there. And if they see you, they're very quiet. So they're very secretive that way. So they are so secretive that, again, we were following radio marked owls for many years for my PhD. And one of the birds went quite far in northern Manitoba in this stunted spruce tamarack bog. You can see it's got a lot of sphagnum moss, Labrador tea, and there's no real big trees. So the owl signal was indicating that it was coming. The owl was probably dead because the signal was on the ground. And as we got closer to this owl, down arrow key there. So I don't know if you see the owl. It's just off center to the left of center, just to the left of those two dark trunks. And to our surprise, the owl wasn't dead. It was sitting there on the ground. We thought, well, why isn't it flying away? And there we got closer, and you can see the female clearly now, just sitting there. We got closer still, and then she did something that she was exhibiting extreme aggression here. You can see the rictal bristles, the feathers that normally cover the bill, are spread. The nictitating membrane, that semi-translucent third eyelid, is flicking rapidly. Her head is puffed up really big and her body's starting to swell. And she's more or less telling us to get the heck out of there, please. And so this is we thought that was peculiar behavior too, until she stood up and revealed that she was actually brooding a number of chicks you can see on the ground there. So this was the first record in North America of great gray owls nesting on the ground. So you might recall the pictures earlier, the bird nesting in a stick nest built by other species, the one that subsequently used a snag in a broken off tree or a diseased tree. And now they're nesting on the ground. So the great gray owl has extremely flexible opportunities, or is flexible behavior that allows it to nest in a variety of areas and on surfaces. So because we wanted to study a population of great gray owls, we more or less built a network of nest structures that we were either natural or artificial in terms of us building a platform. And we had a network of about 140 nest structures scattered over southeastern Manitoba. You can see this predates digital maps. There's Winnipeg, quite a substantial population of people, and just about an hour and a half east of Winnipeg, you have some of the densest breeding concentrations of great gray owls known in the world, which is quite fun and a great opportunity. The network of stick nests, or nest structures, it's kind of like putting out a fishing net in the water and then checking to see how many owls you get in the net or network of nest structures. So it's a different way of sampling a population. And that's one of the, back up here. That's some of the breeding grounds that part of our study area, and that is a tamarack tree with a stick nest This was originally built by broadwing hawks and subsequently used by owls. So what we found by monitoring these structures from year to year is that the great gray owls go through a 3 to 5 year boom bust cycle. And you can see that the years like 1985, 89, 92, and 95 were years when, very few or no great gray owls were nesting at all. And then over a year or two, the population would build and peak, and then it would crash again. And we continued on this study to present day. And so we've got many more years of data like this. Well, famous biologist David Meach, and perhaps many more biologists, have come to the realization that if you want to know a predator, you got to know its prey. So we set out to study small mammal populations because the literature suggested that great owls ate mostly small mammals. So this is a picture of Patsy. We set out quite a few, 300 snap traps every year in 2 different locations, and we monitored them for 3 nights. And it was a standard sampling process for small mammals. So this is the total, whoops, I don't have very many graphs or slides like that, but this one's kind of neat because it shows that the small mammals like redback voles, meadow voles, shrews, and the others, which include things like jumping mice, deer mice, they go through population changes over time. But the message here I want you to take home is that the redback vole is by far the most common small mammal out in the areas that we sampled. And the areas we sampled were actual breeding home ranges of great gray owls. So about 80% of all the small mammals we trapped were redback voles. And this is what they look like. They're incredibly cute. And probably most Canadians don't know that the redback vole is probably the most common small mammal in Canada. So you would expect that great gray owls eat a lot of redback voles. And so, owls, they regurgitate pellets with the undigestible parts of their meals. They barf them up essentially, and they contain the fur, the bones. You can see here an upper skull, some lower jaws. And the thing that really helps us identify what they're eating is the dentition patterns on the teeth of these prey remains. And so we can identify to species which small mammals they're eating. In our honeymoon, Patsy and I dissected lots and lots of owl pellets, or during our courtship phase, I guess. Anyhow, to our great surprise, after looking at, now over thousands of pellets, 90% of what they were eating were meadow voles, which were not the most common small mammal in the areas where they bred. We thought that was really surprising. And if you look at the percentage for redback voles, it's only 4%. So the owls were disproportionately eating one species of small mammal lower than their availability, or in excess of their availability. And that was a really strange result. In fact, during my PhD defense, one of my examining professors asked me why they don't eat redback voles. And I said, I'm not sure. Maybe they just don't taste good. But we haven't done an experiment to prove that. So here's a picture of a meadow vole. And I'll confess, this is my only nature faker shot. This is actually a dead meadow vole. And I propped it up on a log. I put a little spit in its eye to make it gleam. And I put a little blueberry vaccinium leaf in its mouth. So apologize for faking that one, but. So when we examined the relationship between the great gray owl nesting index, which is the number of nests divided by the number of nest structures that we checked, and we looked at all the small mammal data, the only one that had a significant relationship was with the meadow vole. So essentially, the great gray owl, over most of its North American range, it's evolved to be a very specialist predator. It does eat other things. And when you're picking through thousands of pellets, and you're looking at meadow vole after meadow vole after meadow vole, and you come across something different in the pellet. It's kind of exciting. And so the creature upper left is a star-nosed mole, and we would find the remains of those in some pellets very infrequently. We found the remains of one rough grouse in all those pellets over the decades. And that we're not sure if it killed it or if it just was scavenging on it. Now, you might recognize this prey item. This is a short-tailed shrew, and it's North America's only venomous small mammal. And so for any owl to catch and kill and eat one of these, it's kind of dangerous. It's kind of like humans eating puffer fish. If you're familiar with puffer fish, if a chef isn't preparing it properly, the people who eat the puffer fish could die because of toxins. Well, if the owls get bit by a short-tailed shrew before they kill it, the owls could die. And we've had cases of eastern screech owl, dead with a short-tailed shrew in its talons, and the shrew bit the owl, and the owl didn't make it. So they both died together. Some other unusual prey remains include this one's chewing up a snowshoe hare, which is kind of a big prey item for a great gray owl. So again, we're not sure if it scavenged this or if it actually killed it. Snowshoe hares can kick pretty strong, and it'd be easy for an owl to be hurt. Other strange items include this big muskrat. And this was a picture from a biologist in Quebec who this owl killed and brought a muskrat up onto its perch. And even the fact that it could carry it up there is quite remarkable. So they are meadow specialists, but they do eat a variety of food. Now, this was a suspected case of cannibalism. We were walking out to try to catch a great gray owl in the winter, and my boot hit something under the cover of snow. And when I brushed it off, there was a freshly killed and partially eaten great gray owl, maybe 15, 20 meters from the great gray owl we were trying to catch. We said, could this be cannibalism? And then later on from Minnesota, we got this image of a great gray owl plucking a freshly killed great gray owl. So I think cannibalism is a potential in many predators, and including the great gray owl. They usually get along quite well, especially in the spring during courtship. And in this picture, you can see the female on the left and the male on the right. And you know that because male owls are often quite a bit smaller than the female owls, reverse sexual size dimorphism. So the males are probably a little nervous approaching a bigger female. But in the spring, they can't help themselves. This is a male great gray owl trying to look as sexy as possible. To do that, he's holding a freshly caught meadow vole in his bill near a nest structure, and he's giving a courtship call, a hoot. And the male owls, when they do this, sound like if a female sees that and says, gee, he's kind of cute, she'll fly in and then she'll fly in and grab that vole from him and saying, okay, you're kind of cute and you can hunt, but what about a nest? So the male's territory includes a number of nest structures, and he kind of shows the female the variety. And here's a female flying over one nest structure, checking it out. And if all goes to plan, then the female will say to him, okay, little guy, you can now sit beside me. And that's one of the few times you see great gray owls actually sitting beside each other. Again, you can see the smaller male on the right. And there's a division of labor. Many birds of prey have this, where the female does most or all of the incubating and brooding of the young. So for 30 days incubation and about maybe up to 2 weeks of intense brooding, the female's on that nest, and the male's feeding her and then eventually feeding the young as well. This is a good year when there's a lot of prey. You might recall that graph where the number of nests increases to a peak. And in a peak year, the females in our study area could lay up to 5 eggs. And these look like chicken eggs, but you can tell they're owl eggs because they're a little more rounded. And of course, when there's not enough prey, they lay fewer eggs, or some years no eggs at all. When you see a great gray sitting on a nest like this one, her back is really flat. It's kind of level with the horizon. And that typically means she's still incubating. Once the eggs start hatching and the young are in there, her back goes up at an angle and her head is a little held a little higher. So you can tell what phase the nest is at just by how they're sitting. And here's a freshly hatched great gray. They may weigh about 50 grams when they hatch, so they're not very big. And look, around the edge of the nest, you can see a couple of metal voles, but you can see that they're kind of half voles. So sometimes the male, when he catches one, he'll eat the head or head and 4/4, and he'll bring the bottom half to the female. So he gets his, I don't know, 40%. And the young grow really quickly. Here you can see them just over a week old. You can also see the size difference here. The great grays have what they call an asynchronous hatch. So the female starts incubating as soon as the first egg is laid, and she lays an egg every 2 or 3 days. So you can get quite an age difference or size difference between the biggest chicks and the youngest chicks. And when there's not enough food, the younger chicks sometimes starve, or they actually get eaten by the older chicks. So it's an insurance policy to kind of ensure that they can produce at least some healthy young. And there's a lot of affection and vocalizations between the female and the chicks. This is a behavior called allopreening, where they kind of preen each other's face. And always nice to see that. And the female is probably worthy of the, I don't know, Mother of the Year or Century award, because she does her best to keep the nest clean up to a point. She actually eats the regurgitated pellets of the young and also eats their feces. And she'll fly away from the nest once or twice a day and just regurgitate this mass of horrible material away from the nest, presumably to help reduce the smells at the nest, which would reduce the likelihood of predators from things like black bear or fisher or lynx. And the other role the female does is, the male, when he's coming in with food and the older chicks are out of the nest and in the surrounding forest, you can see a smaller chick still in the nest. The male just flies to whoever's calling the loudest. And so the female will sometimes fly, intercept the male before he gets to the older chick who's out of the nest, grab the vole from him, fly back to the nest, and make sure the little guy gets something to eat. Chicks leave the nest, like all owls, or most of them anyway, leave the nest before they can fly. And so they're quite vulnerable in the ground. And their wings aren't developed enough for them to flap up, but their legs and talons and feet are incredibly strong and sharp, and they can just scurry up a near vertical tree like nothing. And they're really good at hiding. So you can see this chick. But I took a picture of a chick from the back against the trunk or bark of the tamarack tree here, and you can just see how their feathers just look like lichen and rough bark of the trees. So from certain angles, they're extremely well camouflaged. And when you're a certain distance from them and they see you, this one's on a leaning tree, but not quite tall enough to get up high. And they see you from a distance and they do what they call a tall thin. So they try to make themselves look tall and thin like a broken stump. And they are very quiet and they hardly move at all. And they just keep an eye on you. But if you get close to within 2 or 3 feet, their attitude changes completely. They invert their wings, they snap their bills, and they will leap at you with those sharp talons. So they are ready for a good fight, even at a young age. This is like a preteen great gray owl, so it can fly. And you can see it doesn't really have much of a facial disc. It is still quite downy on the head. And this is a great gray owl chick, a young of the year, a juvenile that is just about to be kicked out of its territory. The characteristic white and black patch under the bill hasn't erupted yet. And what happens is when that appears, that's when the adults kick them out and stop feeding them. We go to ban them at the nest sites. We're walking through the bogs where they occur. There's a lot of wet vegetation in there. This is equisetum that's quite tall. Patsy's about 5'2", and so this vegetation is quite high. And we kind of have to find the chicks in this forest. So often what we do is we get close to the nest, we sit down quietly, you can see her here, and we imitate the sounds of the male and the female. So I've already imitated the male for you, and the female, after the male calls, he'll give a call again. And then in response, the female will give a food demand call, which is. And so we imitate those calls, and the young think that it's an adult with food, and they start calling, and their calls sound like. So once we hear the young calling in the forest, then we can locate them, round them up, band them, and then we can move on to try to catch the adults. And we do that using a lure. And our lure, the most effective lure, is actually typically an unreleasable raven. So we will take a young and put the raven on a branch near the young and wait for the female or male to notice, and they'll come in and try to kill the raven. We have to protect the raven, and then we're able to catch them. So here's a female who's seen that, and you can just look at her face. She means business. In fact, we sometimes just catch these females as they're flying toward the ravens in a net, or just grab them off a branch. Then we weigh them and measure them, and this is way back in the 80s. And you can see this nylon bag. It's my mother-in-law's nylon, who she gave us to help us with our research. And all these decades later, we're still using the same nylon bag. The measurements we found were really good for sexing great gray owls, which isn't a problem during the breeding season, but in the winter when you catch them, even though the females are bigger, there's some overlaps in weight sometimes, or wing chord or tail length. But the definitive measurement is the foot pad, which you have to carefully measure without getting hurt. And that's the distance from the tip of the fleshy part of the middle toe to the tip of the fleshy part of the hind toe, or the halix. And females are about 70 millimeters and males are 65. We also age them, and here on the left you can see the wing of an adult great gray owl. You can see many different age classes, really dark new feathers. You can see dark brown feathers, you can see light brown feathers, and then extremely faded feathers like this one here. And none of these feathers have what we call our juvenile buffy tips. And on the right side, you can see these feathers all have these light colored buffy tips, and those are juvenile feathers, and they can keep those up to 4 years. So even in old grainy slide film photos from back in the 80s, you can tell that this owl is a juvenile or hatched the previous spring, because all the tips on its secondaries that you can see here, and then the tail, they're all light colored tips. And of course, with more modern digital cameras that take much sharper images, you can see this one here is also a juvenile. So it's really interesting that even from photos, you can get an idea of the age of the owl once it flies. And then there's really extreme plumage variations, like in many species. This is a melanistic great gray owl. And then we have partial leucism, or some white feathers. And the number of white feathers that show up in great gray owls increases as the birds get older, kind of like my scruff gets a little grayer every year. And then this one's from Saskatchewan. I don't know what was happening, but I suspect it probably was caught near a uranium mine or something. I'm just kidding. We don't know. It's just an extreme version of atypical plumage. Here's the little radio transmitters we put on back in the day, and they weighed about 30 grams, and it lasts 2 years. And we could put them on an owl and band them and weigh them and age them and let them go in about 15 to 18 minutes. So we didn't keep them long. Here you can see an owl flying with a little antenna coming off its back. And we followed those owls around. They got so used to us that they would see us and go, oh, it's just those guys, and they'd fall right back asleep. So we were able to record some great behavior watching these birds because we could find them. And then we also recorded where they're kind of their habitat associated with their breeding. And standing on top of our old beat up Jeep, we could get a signal from about maybe up to 4 miles, 5 miles away, and then pinpoint them. And so the picture here of the habitat with this little creek, some low wet vegetation adjacent to some mature forests were really the magic mix for great gray owls. They need that mature forest that has stick nests built by other species or snags associated with wet habitats where meadow voles thrive. And forestry, to some extent, mimics this fragmentation of habitat. And here you can see some cutover areas. But the problem with forestry was it creates these long, straight lines. And an owl hunting on the edge, a great gray owl, could fall prey to other owls like great horned owls, which were one of the main predators of great gray owls in our study area. So here's a picture of one that was killed and partially eaten by a great horned owl. And we know that because we flushed the owl off the carcass. And but to the great horned owl's defense, they typically kill more great grays, usually when their main prey are at low points in their cycle. So our recommendations to forestry were to create cutover areas that more simulated the irregular edges associated with things like fire. So here you can see a twisted, convoluted shape to this cut, and it reduces the line of sight to reduce potential mortality or predation. We also had to follow the owls with airplanes sometimes, and from 10,000 feet, we could get a signal off, pick up a signal from the radio marked owl from about 45 miles each side of the airplane. And boy, we had to really relocate, fly far to find where owls went. So our study area southeast of Winnipeg, when the prey population crashed, these owls really motored. In fact, some of them went up to 800 kilometers in 3 months or less to find areas that had lots of food. So again, Winnipeg's down here. This is the Hudson Bay on the upper right corner. And males didn't go as far as females, and there were some other differences in their dispersal pattern or migration pattern. So why were they doing that, and how do Manitoba's owls relate to populations of owls, great gray owls elsewhere? So we looked at the diet and how similar they were. And Manitoba was more closely related to places like Finland, Norway, in terms of the owl's diet, and very close to areas like Alberta and Alaska, and quite different from some of the other populations in North America, such as Wyoming, California, and Oregon. So the big difference, well, we went down to California to study great grays there for a while to find out why they were so different. And we got up into their breeding habitat in winter to check it out. And that's Patsy on skis. And we went with a biologist, Jeff Maurer, and we measured the snowpack there. And the snowpack up in the breeding areas, up in the mountains, was 27 feet thick. Now, great gray owls are good at catching prey under snow, but they're not that good. And when the owls have to relocate in winter, they go down slope, down elevation, over short distances, maybe up to 30 kilometers, down to, like, you see this little meadow here across the picture. So we go down to that meadow where the great gray owls are in the winter, and we see these wet areas. So there's some meadow voles in here for sure, but there's another prey species that the great gray owls eat there that really change their behavior, and that's pocket gophers. And they can catch pocket gophers under soil because they listen for them and hear their movements. Now, in Manitoba, they catch prey under snow all the time, but great gray owls are hunting during the day, and they're always looking out for voles and mice. So here you see the tracks of voles across the snow surface, and when an owl sees one, there's one running for its life. The voles don't like to be exposed, and the owls will fly in as fast as possible. And if they're fast enough, they'll just scoop them right off the surface. Voles have another interesting habit. This is a hole in the snow, and you can see the little dirty flecks here. That's vole poop and vole urine. And so the voles have to make tunnels in the snow, and they tunnel up to the surface to help get fresh air down at the bottom of the snow layer near the ground. And the owls are kind of like people ice fishing. They kind of wait by these holes, and when the vole comes up, they just grab them. And that's a really fun behavior to watch. So here's a vole. It's in an aquarium tunneling through the snow, so I could get a picture of a vole in the snow. It's kind of hard to do that, but they make noise when they scratch the surface, but this is where they really live, under the snow, deep at the ground level. It's in science, we call it the pukak level or layer. And it can be -30 above the snow, and down there near the ground, it's 0 or maybe -1. So the voles really have a great time down there, and there's lots of food for them. They tunnel up through the snow to get seeds. And the great gray has one of the biggest facial discs of all the owls. And that's really the key to their success in terms of finding voles. It essentially amplifies sound. And just recently, in the last 2 years, we've been researching what sounds make it through the snow, and only the low frequency sounds actually get up through the snow surface. There's a close-up of their complicated ear structure when you part the facial disc and show you where the flap is. Actually, can you still see my little image in the while the PowerPoint's going? Anyhow, I'm gonna hold up this ear flap of this stuffed great gray owl head. You can see it there. So it's right beside the eye, deep inside the feathers. Have very complicated structures on the wings and feathers, including this serrated trailing edge, which is kind of like the tassels on a scarf, the little fine points on the leading edge, and then the upper surface of the owl's feathers are covered with a thick, fuzzy surface. And all these 3 features help the owls fly almost perfectly quiet. And that way they can hear while they're flying the voles, sweet vole sounds under the snow, and dive into the snow after them. Sometimes the snow's so thick they almost disappear from view. And if they're successful, they pop their head up quite quickly because they don't want to get eaten by something else. Then their head goes back down in the snow, and they bite the head of the vole so the vole doesn't bite them. And they spread their wings and they push off, and they carry their prey away. And you can see how long the legs are on a great gray owl compared to other owls, relatively long, and that allows them to penetrate down, catch voles, like the one in its mouth, up to 18 inches or 45 centimeters thick through thick snow cover. So I'd just like to thank Patsy for all her support and research, help with research, and I am going to just quickly, hopefully, go ahead here to one slide. There we go again. Now, so I mentioned earlier, Bob, Nero, and Ruth had a very important influence in my personal life. Bob essentially introduced me to Patsy as a fellow biologist to work on the project, and then didn't do a very good job supervising us. So our relationship also expanded into kind of a personal one. We ended up getting married in 1990 in Bob's backyard, Bob and Ruth's backyard. And these are our kids. And you can see on the left corner, he was born in 1992. And you can see here that he was born in a year when no owls were nesting. And then Brooke was born in 1995, another year when no owls were resting. So Patsy and I were quite proud. We told all our friends, well, look how smart we are. We had kids when there were no owls nesting, so we didn't have to, we had more time to look after them before the next active busy field season. And our friend said, no way, you were just really stimulated by all the owls breeding the years before, and that's why you had kids in 1992 and 95. So 2 competing theories, not sure which one's right. But I think I'm going to turn it back to Anne, if you're still with us. And I'd like to show you a short clip from a beautiful nature series by The Nature of Things and it's all focused on sound. And they came to Manitoba and they filmed great gray owls with us, and they also filmed a tame great gray owl that we have, and for some of the close-up shots. So I heard earlier that you're going to have a presentation on nature films and by one of the people involved with the industry, and so that I think that's going to be a really neat presentation you're going to get. But again, this short clip is part of that nature series. I have permission from Nature of Things to show it to you, and it focuses on some of the research we did on how owls overcome an acoustic illusion. And briefly, if you've ever taken a pen and a straw and put it into a glass of water, you notice that the light refracts the image and it looks like the straw or pen is bent. So water, which is frozen snow, actually bends sound like it does light waves. And so it creates an illusion. And if the owls don't find a way to overcome that, they can't catch prey because it's not where they think it is. But the owls have figured this out. And we came upon this by accident doing other research on sound frequencies. So it was quite an exciting discovery, and look forward to sharing it with you.
Oh, sorry. I think we're just about ready to do that, so stand by while I share this video clip. And just want to make sure I have the sound going here. Share computer sound. Good. Come on. Okay.
In the forests of Manitoba, the great gray owl is a master of stealth. Specially adapted feathers allow him to approach in dead silence. His prey is hidden under a thick blanket of snow. To combat the extreme cold, the great gray owl must catch 7 field voles a day. To succeed, he must rely on his most effective weapon, his hearing. Voles need to feed continuously, or they'll freeze to death. To find new supplies of food, they constantly dig tunnels, unaware of the danger above. The owl's large facial ruff, formed of dense feathers, helps amplify sound and funnel it towards his ears. Through half a meter of snow, the sound of scampering feet is inaudible to us. But not to him. With the help of a special acoustic camera, equipped with 60 highly sensitive microphones, we can see what the owl is hearing. this time, he's missed. Despite his acute hearing, hunting in snow is a challenge. It not only muffles sound, it bends it as well. While it appears that the vole is here, it's actually over here. The only way to overcome this acoustic illusion is for the owl to get directly above the vole, where sound is no longer distorted by the snow. As he flies, he tracks the sound as it changes. The closer he gets, the less it's bent by the snow. Until finally, he pinpoints his target. For the great gray owl, acute hearing is essential to conquer the snow and secure a meal.
Well, that was great. The videos and the presentation. Thank you so much, Jim, for sharing your passion for this particularly wonderful owl and your life's work with us.
Yeah, I'll just show you one more graphic here. This is the stuffed head of a great gray, and this is its skull.
Yes.
And if you superimpose the skull, I'll try to give it justice here. But you can see how big their facial disc is compared to their skull. And so it's quite an enormous disc. And it's been really neat to finally have some technology like that sound camera that
Yes.
allows us to actually see where the sound is and come across that phenomenon of refraction of sound by snow. So we're still doing more research on the sound, sound dispersal by snow, and so my collaborator is from California, and he's coming up again this winter for a third time to continue some of our experiments.
Now, does anyone have any questions for Jim? He said that he would answer them if you do. So you can unmute yourself and just ask by voice, or you can put it in the chat. That's up to you. There's certainly kudos. Thank you. It's been really wonderful to see. I can't imagine getting to see that many great gray owls.
It's
Excuse
boom
me, I
bust.
have
So
a
some years,
Rod?
I have a question. I'm just wondering, how much do they scavenge? Is that fairly common?
we don't know. But in many years of watching, following great gray owls, we certainly have never seen that behavior ourselves. And one of the things that people are finding out using trail cameras at carcasses is, for example, I think it was in the Yukon, I believe, they put a trail camera out on a carcass to see, they were trying to record lynx scavenging, and they caught a northern hawk owl coming down and feeding on the carcass and defending it against things like magpies or corvids anyway. And so trail cameras are kind of recording some of these behaviors, more so than the random chance observation, live observations. So yeah, it's a good question. We don't really know, but it doesn't seem to be that often.
Thank you.
I noticed in one of the pictures towards the end there that it looked like one of them was carrying a tag on its leg that had number 18 or 81 on it. What kind of what was the purpose of those tags?
When I first started studying great gray owls with Bob Nero in Manitoba, Bob Nero and his research partner Herb Copeland at the Manitoba Museum, when they caught owls and released them, banded them and released them, they wanted a way to visually identify an owl they captured. And so they, for a while, they put on these really big, bright yellow tags using a snap ring onto a modified band. And, you know, when we started our research, we did that for about, I can't even remember how long, but a short period. And we just said to Bob, we just didn't feel comfortable putting those tags on. And so we stopped. And so they were originally used to help identify a bird that had already been banded.
Right. Yeah, certainly the technology has improved on that with colored bands that you can put on the legs or numbered bands that you can actually read some digits on, or other devices that you can pick up like your radio tags and such, reducing the need for something as invasive as that. Any other questions? Quiet crowd tonight. Well, Jim, thanks for coming all the
I
way
was
from
wondering,
Manitoba. Go ahead.
you're welcome. I had a question for everybody. Like, how many folks here have actually been able to see a great gray owl, either in BC or elsewhere? And what was it like?
You can use your camera and raise your hand. You can use the raise hand reaction if you know where to put it, where to find it.
Oh,
Somebody,
okay, that's great.
I've seen one now too here. I will tell you that I visited Manitoba and was told, oh, guaranteed to see a great gray owl. And I think we went out right to that area that you had on your map, and we didn't see any. I was with Chris Artuzo, who said he could find great gray owls, but that didn't happen. And tried the same in Edmonton, no luck there either. So and also in near Walla Walla, Washington, everybody said, "Oh yeah, we get great gray owls here all the time," except when I was looking for them. It really was a nemesis bird.
They seem to they kind of go back into the forest if there's a substantial wind. If you look at the feathers on their body, they're very loose, not like a snowy owl that has kind of a windbreaker type contour feathers on its body. That the great grays, they just look like a really fluffy dust mop. And so when it's windy, they head away from the openings and the edges back into the forest to get out of the wind. So depending on I don't know if the wind was a factor, if you remember.
I don't think so. But Laura said that she saw one at Rifle. Laura, I suspect that might have been 2015 because there was one there as well as the one on Quadra. And I was stubborn and I would not go and see it because it wasn't on Vancouver Island. And I needed the great gray owl for my Vancouver Island big year list. So so I didn't see it. I didn't see the rifle bird either. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, just thank you again so much, Jim, from coming all the way from Manitoba on short notice, and we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you very
More
much.
applause for you.
Thanks for your support for to Discover Owls.
Okay,
That was
bye for now.
great.
Thank
Great.
you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.